Mr. No, if we don't talk about Antifa, is Antifa going away?
No, they're not going away. Since the uh, election night, for example, in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, the National Guard was activated by the governor because dozens, or actually more than 100 masked militants marauded through downtown, destroying property. They vandalized a church that provides charity services on Inauguration Day in Portland. To protest the inauguration of Biden. Antifa destroyed the headquarters of the Democrat Party. So this perception that they only attacked things on the right is wrong. They attack anything that they view as American. So that includes democratic institutions, buildings that represent the rule of law, and yeah.
So, and Mr. No, one of your co-panelists has said of Antifa that, quote, though often violent, they do not yet use terrorist tactics or acts, close quote. Based on what you've seen firsthand, do you agree with that statement?
So I think the issue with the lack of understanding of Antifa's violence comes from the fact that there's not a lot of mainstream media coverage of it. A lot of people, lawmakers in DC, will get their media coverage from the New York Times or Washington Post. And sometimes those publications will send parachute journalists into the Pacific Northwest, but by and large, they don't have somebody on the ground every day as the riots were breaking out, let's say in Portland, or when Chaz, the autonomous zone in Seattle. And this is areas where people were bringing with them homemade explosives in their backpacks and distributing them to others to throw at the federal courthouse, bringing in electric tools to cut into the fence so that they could set the building on fire. They did set the exterior on fire multiple times. And it's not just law enforcement that's inside. There's also civilian people who are working as staff who've had to flee for their lives, as they did at the Justice Center. So I think these acts, because they're targeted on facilities that have civilians inside, I think based on my understanding of the laws, these do count as terrorist acts, but they're not being reported as such or perceived as such for political reasons.
And one of your co-panelists has also said that Antifa's organizing principle is to confront the alt-right. Do you agree with that statement, and can you please explain?
That statement in itself is true, but Antifa's, the label of who they call alt-right or fascist applies very broadly. So yes, it will include people who are actually on the far right, but it will also include people who are patriotic, who are holding an American flag that they will also assault and beat. Any and all law enforcement, anybody who defends the institutions of this country, they view as people who are fascistic in one way or another. I mean, if you dive into their ideology, you look at the literature that they disseminate at their protests and riots and when they establish autonomous zones, you'll see that they're calling for the overthrow of the American government. So this whole label of anti-fascist that they're using is just essentially marketing and branding to mask what is a very extremist, radical agenda to destabilize the republic.
Another comment that was tweeted out by one of your co-panelists said, quote, there are no laws defining domestic terrorism in the USA, close quote. Is that correct, Mr. No? Are there no laws defining domestic terrorism in the US?
There are laws on the book. I think the problem right now is that the investigators are being pressured one way or another to pursue things for political reasons. I'm not here to say that there's no threat coming from the far right. That's not my area of expertise. I defer to those who have been giving testimony today. I think, at the beginning we heard this 75% of the deaths from domestic terrorist attacks have come from the far right. Well, does that mean that the other 25% doesn't deserve attention? I don't think so. It's about keeping all Americans safe, and that includes investigating all extremist ideologies.